Hi, everybody. John Halda here, and I'm delighted to have John Davis of Linehaul Central with me. John, welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me again. This is awesome.
We were chatting the other day in Dallas at the Linehaul Summit, and we thought, let's do an informative video talking about common mistakes that drivers make as far as safety goes. And you said, okay, so I'm holding your feet to the fire.
Awesome.
Some ground rules. We're not going to name names, no driver names, no company names, but we want to hear not only some of the fun edge cases, but we want to hear the stuff that you see day in and day out that keep tripping up TSPs, especially in light of the new VEDRs.
Great.
Where can we start?
Where I generally start on this is what I call in-cab safety. And, I sort of put it in different boxes of things that drivers can work on. So we'll start with in-cab safety. And when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about a driver wearing their seatbelt and, a driver not holding a cell phone. So what is causing a lot of problems with the VEDRs is there are some areas of the VEDR like wearing a seatbelt, not holding a cell phone, not having cell phone distractions is, two of the major categories of the VEDR system and our scoring system. And to me, those are the easiest ones to control. Driver, please put your cell phone down. Driver, wear your seatbelt. So where are the mistakes happening? The mistakes are happening that we don't give drivers tools like a cell phone holder to put their cell phone up on the dash to get it out of their hand. We don't give them a Bluetooth headset. Driver, you need to provide a Bluetooth headset, and they may not have the funds to have that headset. And of course, we are wanting to dispatch them, we're wanting to communicate with them, and then they're having to hold their cell phone. So I think in those two instances, and with the cell phone, is the mistake is not providing the driver the tools they need to keep it out of their hand and protect the driver from themselves, is what I say.
So call me a ding dong. I've never owned a truck or anything, but
Mhm.
is there some sort of high expensive cost to have a cell phone holder in a truck?
No,
Because I bought one on Amazon the other day. It clips into the air vent of the air conditioner, holds any size phone. It kind of expands, contracts, and it's easy to pop out. And I think I spent $35 on that.
yes, it's compared to the cost of failing your VEDRs and not reaching your safety score that you want to be in, to buy more routes, to expand your business, $35 is nothing on that.
And that's one time, by the way. You don't have to, VEDR scores are monthly.
Correct.
Where are most of the in-cab accidents or issues, veteran issues, incidents happening? Is it out on the road or is it in the yard?
It's in the yard. The majority of it is in the yard. And a lot of this has been on the history of how we've done things in the different terminals. So, hey, I don't need to wear my seatbelt while I'm hooking up trailers. Well, the problem with that mindset is the camera still catches it.
Right.
And there'll be folks that'll listen to this video. Well, you need to challenge that with your VEDR provider, and you need to do that. Well, number one, that takes time. Time is money. You know, our job is to move cash registers, aka tractors, from point A to point B efficiently and quickly and safely as possible. And if you're spending time trying to argue every time someone has an event on a terminal for not wearing a seatbelt, you're wasting a lot of time. It only takes not even a full second to put your seatbelt on. And I tell drivers this. I'll say, I know it's a pain. You're setting up doubles. You've gone over, you got your dolly, you're trying to hook it up to your trailer, trying to go find your other trailer. Just put the seatbelt on and you'll eliminate all of this problem right here.
And for me, ignorant to this, just to confirm, they can have the seatbelt off if the truck's in park, but as soon as it's out of park, they got to have it on.
Correct. Correct. Now, the actual ruling is if they are actively backing into a trailer that they could, because sometimes they have to look over their shoulder if they're in a day cab or they're having to do certain things. It can still throw an event that is still taking time to deal with. Since we're on seat belts, one of the other issues is if you have a driver that is heavier set, you may have to buy a seatbelt extension, or you may have to buy the padding for the shoulder belt to help the driver comply with the wearing the seatbelt. Because I've had that situation happen where a driver goes, I can't wear the seatbelt over my shoulder because it pulls on my neck, it does this, it does that. Because having the shoulder harness behind your shoulder is a fail. You just can't have the lap belt on. So sort of like the cell phone, you have to have the tools for your driver to make them successful. And, if the driver is asking for an accommodation, I need a seatbelt extender, say, no problem, I will get you one and make that happen. Same with the cell phone. Don't buy the cheapest Bluetooth headset, get one that they can actually use. And there are some really decent ones out there that they can use the headset with hands-free commands. Hey, read that last text to me that came through. Or can you send a text to, Joe, my dispatcher, with this?
What do those cost?
They can be anywhere from $100 to $200. And, but again, the cell phone issue is if you're failing your VEDR, that's the issue. If you get a roadside violation, a driver gets caught with a cell phone in their hand, it's an expensive ticket. In some states, it's $2,600.
US?
US.
Gotcha.
It is 30 CSA points, which you will suffer through for a year. And I have seen it in 2 instances where it was an immediate disqualification from FedEx Ground of the driver holding the cell phone.
So let's go back to this stupid $35 cell phone holder.
Mm-hmm.
Why aren't owners doing that?
I think it's that there's some that's the mentality the driver should supply it themselves.
Okay.
And my attitude is that you need to give your drivers the tools to be successful and set the expectation. I provided you a cell phone holder. I provided you a nice Bluetooth headset. I expect you to be using those. And then as you're watching the cameras and they're not using those tools, then you have coaching to work with. Hey, I provided you a cell phone holder. Please use the cell phone holder. Now, our procedures in ground, it makes it difficult, especially going back to the terminal. The dispatching app is on the phone. And so that's another mistake, since we're talking about in-cab safety. Another mistake that drivers make is they're riding around holding their phone like this, looking for trailer 886001, and instead of the phone being in their cell phone holder okay, this is what I need to do. So the system is sort of set up against the driver on the terminal for that. And giving them that cell phone holder can really help with that.
And remind me again, failing your VEDR KIs in a given month, how many points is that in your score?
In the mid-20s, 25. So, it's a year that you're dealing with that. That's the problem.
Right. And so even if you let that driver go, the points don't go with them.
Correct.
Your points.
Correct. And this is the other thing.
Little like an STD. Can I say that on here?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, but it's with the way the scoring is going now, that you do have a number of active tractors to deal with, but I still want TSPs and owners and BCs to be thinking about, and their safety people to be thinking about, that I have one driver that had 4 KI events for cell phone holding. Well, that's a fail if that one tractor was a single contract single driver, single tractor, that contract would fail the VEDR. And they need to think about that they need to solve that problem.
And let's say they're doing short hauls and they hook up 5 times that day. Can they get 4 of those in one day?
They can. Now, supposedly, and we're testing that, is they should only have one. Like if they had 4 following distance in one day, they're only going to get hit for one event for the day.
What's
However,
their work day or calendar day?
That's a good question. That has not been tested yet on what is a full day on that. My issue as a safety person is we got to address the root cause. You know, if they're holding their phone 4 times, that's still a problem, because the VEDR is one thing. Getting caught with a cell phone violation on the side of the road and that driver being disqualified completely out of the system. Because the 2 drivers that I had that happen with, where they were disqualified from FedEx, they were disqualified forever, gone. It wasn't bring them back and remedial training and any of that. It was gone. So that's why it's so serious, and I don't think a lot of drivers understand that it's, yeah, you can be holding it all the time, but it's till you get caught. That's the problem.
How much of this is ingrained habits from veteran drivers who didn't have cameras watching them all the time, and or do you see the same issue with brand new drivers who fresh into the system?
It's new drivers and it's old drivers. It doesn't matter. And I'll give you a seatbelt story. And I had a driver that I caught him a couple of times on the camera, said, "You're not wearing your seatbelt." Sent him a coaching video. Because I like my drivers to see the video that I'm, accusing them they weren't wearing the seatbelt. They know, there's no argument. You were not wearing your seatbelt. Well, he called me up and cursed me out. I mean, just one side and down the other over this. And I talked to him about it. And after he calmed down, I said, "So what is the issue? Why don't you want to wear your seatbelt?" And then he explains to me that I come from an Eastern Bloc country in Europe. That's where I grew up. He said, "We didn't wear seatbelts my entire life, ever." And so I had to talk to him about it. I said, my concern for you is if you get caught with a ticket of not wearing the seatbelt, you're going to get disqualified. And if you get disqualified, then I can't help you. I can help you right now. I can help you by, if you'll wear your seatbelt, you're not going to get disqualified for that. And so the second step that I had to do after I had that discussion with him, I got him to agree to try. And I even gave him the story that, like, I live in the state of Florida. In the state of Florida, you can ride a motorcycle without a helmet. So why do we have laws that force people to wear seatbelts? Well, it is a state law, it's an FMCSA law, and it's a FedEx requirement, a FedEx ground requirement.
And look, let's not put this on Eastern Bloc countries. I'm 53. When I was a kid in the 70s, my parents would throw me and my sister into the back with my cousins. There'd be 6 kids climbing in the family wagon. Nobody had a seat belt, or feet were hanging out the back. It was a different era.
It was a different era. My seat belt growing up was my mother's arm going across my chest.
Sure, she'll hold you.
Yeah, exactly. But the second step I had to do with this driver is I had to watch the camera for a couple of weeks, and I had to catch him wearing the seatbelt. And then I would call him in the tractor, and I go, I would say by his name, and I go, "Hey, I see you're wearing your seatbelt. You're doing a good job." That was it. That was the end of it. He wore his seatbelt. He even talked to other drivers. "Oh, you better wear your seatbelt, or the safety guy's going to get you. But it was just coming to an understanding of what the problem was.
So we live in an era where there's rewards and punishments and all that kind of stuff, and gamification's a new thing. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Are you allowed to penalize a driver for catching them doing something like no seatbelt or phone use? Can you ding them on their pay?
That may be a whole nother video.
Okay.
John.
So we don't
Yeah.
know the,
So yes, number one, you can, the way I handle it is I like to have number one, I like a 30-day window. We're all human. I'm a safety director, a risk manager, have been for years, and I catch myself. My phone will ding while I'm driving. I will pick up the phone. We're human. We're doing this. Do I think that that can happen on a regular basis with a driver? Absolutely. So I always look at a 30-day window, and the 30-day window is, I want to have a discussion with the driver. Hey, I saw that you had a couple of incidents where you're holding your phone, and I need you to put it in the holder or yada yada. Then if I still see some real problems, then I want the driver to do a retraining video, a strike two. And then strike three is what I call a compliance plan. I don't like the disciplinary action. I don't like the connotation of it. I just call it compliance plan at the top, and it's in three parts. The first part is, this is the policy you're not following. Second part is, this is the behavior that was not following the policy. So the first part would be, the policy of my contractor, da 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 da, is that all drivers must have their cell phone in a holder, use a Bluetooth, a hands-free headset, and not hold their cell phone, something like that. The second one is on July 6th of 2023, or whatever year it is that you were observed holding your cell phone, which is against the policy listed above. And then the third section is my expectations of correcting the behavior. So for the next 30 days, I would like for you to not hold your cell phone. And then I just ask the driver to sign that they understand it and sign it. So, it's that type of system that I think it works better with the drivers, because our job is TSPs, as BCs and AOs and safety people, is to do two things: is protect the driver's job and to protect their life as it comes to safety. If you hold your cell phone and get a ticket and get disqualified from line haul, you're out of a job. If you holding your cell phone and you're distracted and you go off the road and lose your life, yeah, there's reasons we have these things in place, and I just find that's the best thing to do. Now, once you get to those three steps in a 30-day process, and they go, and I've had that happen. I had a driver that said to me, I won't tell you exactly what he said to me, but in an essence, he said, I want to make it perfectly clear to you, Mr. Davis, I will never, ever, ever wear my seatbelt, and you're not going to make me do this. So that was an easy fix. And, and that's the other thing for owners and BCs that are watching this. When it comes to these type of discussions, to me, drivers fire themselves. I've told you 3 times: a coaching, a retraining, and a compliance plan to not hold your cell phone. On the 4th time, I'm telling you, you're not working here anymore, because I've told you these things. So either you do it or you don't do it, and then they have actually terminated themselves.
well, that's human nature. You toss someone a rope, they'll either pull themselves up with it or they'll form it into a noose.
Exactly. So the common mistake that I see with managers and owners on the scenario I just explained, this whole thing, is you have to follow through. That's
We
the
just
problem.
came out of a really tough driver market, and you're
Yep.
thinking, man, it's going to cost me $4,000 to find a new driver. I get it, but
Yep.
this is for another topic: common mistakes owners make. Let's
Right.
stick to drivers.
Right. But that's where I see that. Now let's stay in the in-cab safety.
I got to follow up with a quick question, because
Sure.
you said you don't know if you can penalize drivers. Do rewards work?
We did a program with a client that was a safety challenge with some pretty hefty rewards. And the interesting thing was that 50% of the drivers were really into this challenge. 50% of the drivers did not engage, didn't even
Okay.
care. So, but what it did help us identify was the 50% that we
I
got
was
to
about
work
to
on.
ask the question, was there a difference between the two as far as quality of driver?
Very much so.
Then I
Very
like
much
that
so.
program right away.
Yeah. So I encourage people to consider doing that. It was a lot of work because we gamified the whole thing and did points and did all that. We could do a whole nother video on that also, but it was an interesting process to see the bottom 50% that just did not care. It didn't matter if you threw a $100,000 check out there. And, and this reward was a 4-figure award. It was not, it wasn't $50. Let's just put it that way.
It makes me wonder if somehow during your recruiting, you could find a way to gauge their enthusiasm towards that and weed out the ones who don't care if they're really not the drivers you don't want.
Absolutely. And the number one thing I'm going to tell you on that is setting these expectations I'm talking about in this video today with your drivers from day one. You will not hold your cell phone in my truck. You will wear your seatbelt in my truck. If you set those expectations up front, it will really help you. Even where I see a lot of problems with drivers is they come from one contractor to another contractor. And one of the first things they'll tell me is, well, we didn't do that over at my other contractor. I realize that. Or I've been doing this for 10 years. No one has ever told me to do that. I understand, but you're going to have to do it from here. But setting that expectation up front with the drivers is key.
So we talked a little bit about in-cab, phone, and seatbelt. I'm guessing you led with those because you're seeing that over and over again.
Yep. And then the last thing on in-cab that is becoming a serious problem and it keeps me up at night is drivers altering, disconnecting, covering safety technology in the tractor. So I've had 2 incidents that are common. Number one, drivers taking the time to put aluminum foil over the F-cam in the front of the tractor, which is messing with the F-cam technology. Number two, covering the driver facing camera.
Do you have a zero tolerance policy?
Zero tolerance. I would terminate that driver over those 2 things. Because here's how it affects the owner. Is it goes to the contract and the indemnification of an accident. So you can get away with it until there's an accident. And then as soon as the third party ARC claims comes into play and they go, I need to see your video from that accident. And then that in-cab video is covered. Oh, your indemnification just changed on that. Oh, your F-cam was disengaged because there's aluminum foil on it. Oh, your indemnification. You're looking at somewhere between $20,000 to $75,000 that you could get hit. So that's why I have zero tolerance for it. Is if your driver is covering up a camera or messing with the F-cam, that's grounds that for some contractors that could be putting out of business kind of money.
Well, yeah. I mean, just to use round numbers, I think most solid solo runs produce $20,000 to $25,000 a year in free cash flow for a contractor. Getting whacked with a $75,000 deductible instead of a $2,000 deductible basically means you ran 3 solo tractors for a year and all the work involved for nothing.
And just so everybody's clear on this video, when that indemnification email comes out, they give you 30 days to pay that bill. It's here's the bill. Send me my check.
No option to send in 12 equal monthly payments?
No, sir. No, sir. So that's what keeps me up at night. And when I see drivers, doing stuff and even things like where because the way configuration of some tractors that the camera where it's mounted, they'll pull the sun visor down in front of the camera. If it's a bright sunny day, it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the sun's right in the driver's face, camera may not be placed exactly where I'd want it placed. I can accept that. But the visor over the camera at 2 o'clock in the morning,
Hmm.
no, 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 no. So
But I don't even know if you should accept that, because the camera needs to be repositioned, because if he does have an accident, because the sun's in his eyes on a bright
that's
day,
absolutely
and
right.
the plaintiff's attorneys get hold of the fact that there ain't no video,
Mhm.
it's almost like an automatic loss in court. The insurance company, or FedEx in this case, is going to fold deck immediately because they got nothing to stand on.
Yeah. So, and when it goes towards a spoliation of evidence claim, and a spoliation of evidence claim is basically the way it works is, because this was not provided to me, therefore it is admissible as evidence that it is in the benefit of the plaintiff, not the benefit of the defendant. And once that is done, then that part of liability or, comparative and all that just goes out the window. And that's how those cases go in court. And it's like drivers unplugging a camera or something like that. It's any of that stuff can just greatly affect an owner. And so in-cab safety technology better be working 100%. Cell phone, in holders, Bluetooth headset, seatbelt. That's it. That's it. And we could talk about speeding and defensive driving and all that, but there's so many different variables on that the only other common mistake that I see with speeding, the contract is 65 miles per hour. I've had situations where a contractor will govern the truck at 65, and the driver will take it to a mechanic and take it out of 65.
That's all coming back on the owner.
Correct. So that's where, if you see a camera event and the driver is in the camera event is showing a 72 mile an hour speed limit, there's a problem with the tractor that needs to be dealt with. And if it was an altercation by the driver,
Do the VEDR or the camera systems send alerts for going over 70?
it will create an event.
Okay, so the owner should know.
The owner should know. But that's one of the main things that I see is we don't have a good understanding in the space that the trucks are to be governed at 65 miles an hour. And I'm telling you, it's governed at 65. I keep saying two, but I do have two. I have two incidents right now where there was an accident. The truck was governed over. One was at 69 miles an hour and one was at 71 miles an hour. Those were the speeds at the time of the crash. Okay. 30 days later, it came back to us and said, we want a report from a mechanic on your entire fleet showing what the trucks are governed at.
You talked about the $75,000 bill, pay it now.
Mm-hmm.
Does not having the governor set properly kick that into effect?
I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say that if the contract says 65 miles an hour and you're in breach of that, then that's where I see that coming in.
Gotcha. So I heard an interesting edge case, and I want to know if you've experienced this.
Mm-hmm.
You get a ticket, you can fight a ticket, right?
Correct.
You get a warning. Does that sometimes put points on your thing and you can't fight it?
Yes. And here is a classic example that happened this week.
Okay.
So, and this is a common problem. So in the middle of June, I had a driver with one of our contractors who was going through a construction zone and got stopped for speeding. He got a roadside examination report. There was no speed listed on that roadside examination report. It just said the regulation number speeding through a construction zone. There was no ticket given to that driver. There was no monetary fine. There was no please appear in court. You know, the officer was trying to do the right thing for the driver and do all this. But so I know to look at the CSA scores for FedEx ground packaging system, and I knew that those scores are usually published on the 12th of the month. So I had from last month, I had set a calendar task for the 12th of this month to go look it up. And so what happened in that situation is I looked it up yesterday, and the driver, it was listed there in the CSA score under unsafe driving, and the driver received 30 CSA points for a warning. That contractor is sitting on those points now for a year on their score. The major problem for this is because there was no ticket, there's no infraction, there's nothing to data queue, there's nothing to go to court and do anything. So remember when I said that the driver got an examination report that said that he was speeding in a construction zone? Well, it wasn't until it came out on the CSA score for the package system, FedEx ground package system, that it showed that it was 11 to 15 miles per hour over the speed limit. So if there was a ticket, then you could take the argument of, oh, I can go to court. I may not get it dismissed, but I can get it moved from 11 to 15 miles over the speed limit to 5 miles over the speed limit. And then maybe I'm only looking at 10 CSA points. But because of this, it's 30. So I want contractors to understand and drivers to understand, especially drivers. When you call up and say, oh, they only gave me a warning, it still is very difficult for the contractor. But I also want to say it's still very difficult for the driver. So there's another program out there that, since we're focused on drivers on this video, is the pre-employment screening program, the PSP. And that's a DOT program. So those 30 CSA points went to that driver's record. If that driver left his contractor and went to go to work for another contractor or another trucking company, and they ran a PSP report, if I looked at that PSP report, I wouldn't hire them. Well, you just got a 30 point violation last month, driver. I'm sorry, I can't use you. So it just doesn't affect the contractor. It also affects the driver.
Okay, but hold on a minute. I want to make sure I understand something. There's a DOT PSP report that you can get.
Correct.
Anybody can get it, or you have to go through an agency?
No, you can, any contractor can get it and set up their own account. And it is don't hold me, it's $100 to $125 to set up an account. It's $10 a report. You can only get it one time. You can get it before you hire a driver. That's it. After the driver is hired, you can't.
But this PSP report is not part of the mandated FedEx pre-employment, first advantage, whatnot.
Correct. And I'll tell you how important this report is. I have pulled a report in the last couple of months where the driver said they had no violations, no accidents. Their MVR through first advantage was good. Everything was fine until I pulled that PSP report. His report was 3 pages long of violations.
Because they do it in 80-point font and he had 6 things, or?
No, because all of those violations were outside of what would be called on an MVR. So they were vehicle maintenance violations. They were hours of service violations. But it was, if I remember right, there were 18 violations on there. And
it's like the rap sheets when they get
exactly
the bad guys on first 48, right?
Exactly.
It was, oh, he's been in the system.
He definitely in the system. And then the other thing the PSP report will show you that was interesting for this one driver is he had worked at 6 other trucking companies in the last year. Well, why are you going to waste your recruiting money and your time on somebody that's going to come into your system? Number one, cause you problems with violations and roadside violations. And number two, that's probably not going to stick around. So for $10, you can find out a whole bunch. And then the other important thing on a PSP is credibility. And this happens a lot where I'll pull a PSP report on a driver and there's an accident on there from a year ago. Well, you didn't tell me about that accident. Well, I forgot. Well, what happened in that accident? Well, this lady, I hit her, I spun her out to the guardrail. She burst into the car, burst into flames. So you're telling me you can't remember any of that? But it goes to a credibility discussion with the driver that I asked you on an application, have you had any other accidents? Have you had any other situations, tickets or anything? And you said no. Your MVR shows no. But I pulled this report that pulled from another jurisdiction because it's all jurisdictions that shows you had this accident a year ago. So either the driver is trying to hide something from you, which I don't know if I want to work with that driver, or it was just an honest mistake. Here's why I don't remember that. I was the third vehicle back. It was nothing. They just did this. I really didn't consider it an accident. I can handle that a whole lot better than, there's these 2 accidents that you hit somebody or were involved in a serious accident and you just conveniently forgot to tell me that. So, but for $10, now I will say the second half that is especially drivers, if you're watching this video, the PSP program has a free program, FREE, free. You sign up and it will monitor your PSP report for you, meaning that it's just like your credit report. To me, if I had a CDL, I would consider the PSP report my credit report. And if I want to keep an 850 credit score, I would want to monitor that. Well, the PSP program has a free monitoring system for drivers that would give them an alert if something negatively hit their report. It would just send them an email or a text message or whatever, however notification you set up to go, wait a minute, I haven't had an accident. That's not me. That was put in the system wrong or whatever. A driver can order their own PSP report for $10. And I would do that once a year. I would order my own PSP report. And think about that for recruiting drivers. If you were coming to a contractor, let's say from one contractor to another, I have a copy of my MVR. I have a copy of my PSP report. I'm interested to come work for your contract. I'm going to go ahead and give you this information up front that I have a clean PSP, I have a clean MVR, I have this much driving experience, and I've done my training, yada, yada, yada. Here we go. It's a whole different world than where we are at right now.
John, we're starting to push up against the time we had allotted. What else would you like to share about common driver mistakes that you think we're sharing? And we can do this again. I'm fascinated.
Yeah, I think
I also don't know how you actually get through your day, but that's a different video.
Right. I think for this one, this is a good starting point. We talked about some things because when I look at the things that a driver needs to do, and we'll end it on this. I look at it as about 8 to 10 things that they need to do. We come up with these large handbooks. We have these training programs that have 800 videos in them. And, we just think that there's all this stuff. So I covered in-cab safety, which is very important. The next thing that the drivers have to be an expert at is door pull procedures. That's an immediate disqualifying event for a driver. If you don't understand proper procedures to pull a trailer from a door, you're going to get in trouble. The next one is dropping a trailer, coupling and uncoupling. If you drop a trailer, I may or may not be able to save you. It's a disqualifying event. Then you can go into the ELD and the hours of service, understanding the hours of service, understanding that your ELD, that you need to put the shipment, your seal numbers in, your trailer numbers in. You must certify your logs every day. And, you must understand the operation of your ELD, and you must know how to transfer logs from your tractor to a DOT officer. Then there's maintenance. There is a pre-trip, in-trip, post-trip inspection, and they need to understand how to do that. They need to understand how to do a DVIR, and then just the common things of you've got to do the FedEx required training. You've got to have a good attitude. We need to quit fighting amongst ourselves. We need to have the respect for each other. And a lot of this for the BCs and the AOs is the best way to counter that is set expectations, have your rules in writing, and have procedures in place. And then everybody's on the same page. But I think we could take some of those other buckets and talk about those in the future as one whole thing. But I just gave it to you right there. If everything I just talked about in the last 2 or 3 minutes, if all the drivers did that, that would solve 95% of the problems I see every day.
So I'm going to challenge you, John. Would you please put together a Word or a Google Doc listing those 8 things, and let's put a PDF out there attached to this video and in Linehaul U so that people can have that list right in front of them and use it as a starting point for their own safety program.
Absolutely. Because if they can get their drivers to do those 8 to 10 things, they can be a successful TSP in the safety. And to develop that safety culture, that safety is above all else. That's it.
Perfect. So, John, thank you so much for your time. You're not the type to do this, but I'm going to give a little plug for you right now. Okay. For those of you watching, if you're large enough to have a safety director in your shop, God bless, right? If you've got a Dale Knox, a Billy May, or some of the other phenomenal people in this space, you're doing great. But if you're a smaller contractor, the odds are you can't afford to have a dedicated safety director. It's probably falling on you. Well, John Davis at Linehaul Central is basically a fractional safety director for lots of contractors. And he brings a big team and a wealth of knowledge. So if your safety program is not up to par, at a minimum, you should call John and have a conversation, because he's the type that will spend a lot of time teaching you how to do it, but you can also hire him to do that. And I know a number of people who are working with you who are raving about what you've done for them. Obviously, there are still some problem drivers, can't make it perfect, but with your help, they're weeding those out and improving their overall program. And that's keeping them up in tiers 3, 4, and 5 so that they can continue to grow. So focus on safety. And if you're not doing it just right and you don't have enough hours to do it right, think about partnering with someone like John and get your safety program in order, because FedEx has absolutely made it clear that moving forward, tier 1 or 2, do not pass go, do not collect $200. You ain't eligible for growth, and you're going to have problems being a TSP. So you need to fix that if you're flirting with that level at all. And I heard recently that 72% of TSPs were tier 1 or 2. So don't think you're alone if you're flirting with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
They just changed the numbers to move that to 50%, but half the TSPs out there are tier 1 or 2. That's a problem for everyone.
Absolutely.
Including people on the road.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's work together and fix it. Let's share information and let's get this whole thing better.
I totally agree with that. And I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about some of this stuff. I like this venue that you have provided to have these types of questions and tips and tricks and that kind of stuff. I really enjoy these, John.
Well, you're very welcome. I love doing it. I'm passionate about helping TSPs, as I know you are, with TSPs and drivers. So we'll do it again soon. John Davis, always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.